Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jen Fagan-Fry with the NOAA Central Library. Thanks for being with us. I am here today to talk a little bit about Section 508, and we're going to talk about specifically alternative text. Before we get into that, though, I do want to mention Katie Rowley, our outreach librarian, is on the call as well. She is going to be monitoring our chat and the question panel. If you have questions, please enter them in the question panel. They are recorded there as opposed to the chat. Once we end the webinar, all things that are put in the chat are kind of deleted from there. So if you have questions, please put them in the question panel. We should have time at the end to address some of those questions. That is my hope. And we will get to as many as we're able to. Katie will also answer anything as I'm speaking that she's able to answer for you. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in. We're going to go over just a handful of slides, and then I'm going to do a live demo of just a couple of items in Microsoft Word and in Adobe. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. If not, please shoot us a quick chat to let me know. But I'm going to dive right in. So as I mentioned, today we're going to focus on images and figures. So adding alternative text and what are the guidelines for adding images and figures into online content, including documents. So the standard that we follow is WCAG 2.0 and 2.1. And within WCAG, there is a guideline 1.1 for text alternatives. The whole point of alternative text is to provide some sort of context for any non-text content so that it can convey information to a non-sighted user primarily. Within WCAG, there is what's called a success criterion. There's 1.1.1. And as you can see here, the intent is to make information conveyed by non-text content like images, figures, graphs, maps, accessible through the use of a text alternative. This information, these alternatives allow the information to be rendered in a variety of ways, most commonly through something like a screen reader, so that people who are unable to see the image are able to understand what the image is conveying. So I have here a quick list of just some very basic do's and don'ts when it comes to alternative text. We've gotten a number of questions, or at least I've gotten a number of questions over the past couple weeks about what to put in alternative text, what not to put in alternative text, and when it's appropriate to use very basic or more detailed alternative text. So some of the do's are we're always using alt text for images, figures, illustrations, charts, infographics, maps, groups of images, things of that nature. The items must convey some sort of information, whether it's just a visual or, in the case of graphs and charts, what the data that's being representative. If your image is just there for background, if it's decorative, so a lot of the documents that NOAA produces will just have little lines or sort of decorative borders, things like that, those elements do not require alternative text. But if your item conveys some sort of information, it will require alternative text. Ideally, alt text is going to be succinct. We want to try to be as concise and precise as we possibly can be when we're describing an image. And we want to make sure we're providing the purpose or intent of the image. So instead of providing, alternative text that goes into a long-winded description of a process or something, we want to really focus on what the image is portraying itself. So some of the don'ts, as I just mentioned, don't include any extra or unnecessary information. It sort of clutters up what the alt text is about. And don't be redundant. So don't repeat your caption. In the past, we have accepted alt text where people have just copied over a caption and dropped it in there. It is not a best practice. That information is redundant. So if you're using a screen reader, you would hear the same information twice, which may lead people to think there might be something wrong with their machine or something of that nature. But B, it doesn't really tell you what the image is or what it's trying to convey to you. The other don't is do not use phrases such as image of or graphic of or screenshot of or portrait of, something like that. It's not really necessary. Screen readers will automatically provide that information. It'll tell you it's a figure, it's an image. So people know that it's a picture of a dog or a cat or a fish or whatever it may be. They need to know what kind of fish or if that fish is in a coral reef, something very basic like that. I have included a list of resources here. We're going to put this information up, with the recording on the Section 508 LibGuide that I've created. We will also have this information on our YouTube channel, the library's YouTube channel. I've listed here a handful of resources that I use frequently. And that I'm sure some of you, I may have sent this to you already, but here are just a handful of resources. The Social Security Administration has a wonderful guide for alternate text for images. It's quite thorough. It provides a number of examples, including photographs, logos, how to handle decorative text, just a wide variety of examples. WebAIM, which is Web Accessibility in Mind, is a website that covers a lot of accessibility issues regarded to web content. So it's a little more focused on websites as opposed to documents, but the same principles apply. And they have a number of really great examples, especially when it comes to items or figures or images that have captions. I know I've sent this to a number of people, and it's been really, really useful for many people. They also have examples of items that do not include captions, and I believe there's a couple examples of some graphs in there. W3C has a site that also focuses on complex images. When it comes to complex images, they're referring to things like graphs, charts, infographics. The way to approach alt text for these can be slightly different depending on what you're trying to convey with that information. So specifically infographics. I do not have an infographic in my examples today, so I won't be going over that one specifically, but if you have information like that or images like that, I would really recommend utilizing the W3C complex images resource. It's incredibly helpful. I've also added in a link to how to add alt text images within Adobe and within Microsoft Word. Both of these are for the most recent version of Adobe and Microsoft Word, so Word 2016 and I believe it's Adobe Pro 2017. So those two are there for you. On the Section 508 LibGuide, I do have a link to using InDesign and accessibility tools in InDesign. Unfortunately, I do not have access to that program, so I don't have any specific information, and I don't have any examples of that right now, unfortunately. So hopefully in the future we can get to some more specific InDesign resources, but right now we're just going to focus on Adobe and Microsoft Word. With that, what I'm going to do is just do a couple examples for everyone here. And again, all of this will be on the LibGuide. Some of it already is there, but we'll put this up there as well, these short slides, and also on the library's YouTube channel. So what I've done here is in Microsoft Word, I have started just a very basic document. So forgive the bare bones, but I have a basic document, I have a heading, I have my text. I've already inserted one item with a caption. It already has alternative text, so I'm going to add in a couple more. What I'm going to do is do another sort of word cloud like this one. I will do an image, and then I'm going to put in a third image, but I'm not going to add alternative text. When we convert it to Adobe, I want to make sure everyone knows how to edit alternative text in Adobe as well. So that the last image that I put in, we're not going to put in the alt text in Word. We'll do it once we convert it to Adobe. So With that, I'm sure everyone knows how to do this, so I'm going to kind of go through it quickly, but if you'd like me to stop or redo anything, put a little something in the chat and let Katie know so she can notify me if I need to go back and redo something for you. So to insert an image, we just go into the Insert tab in Word. We're going to go to Pictures, and as you can see here, I have a couple pictures all queued up, and I'm going to choose this one, which is my collaboration network, and I'm going to insert this image. It drops the image in. You have the option here to edit the layout. For accessibility, it is preferred to always have your images in line with text. So make sure that that's selected. And then when you right-click on the image, there is the option for Format Picture. When you click Format Picture, it looks a little bit different than it used to in the old Word. I think the last time I did one of these, we had not been converted over to Windows 10 and the new Microsoft Office suite. So now we have that. All of your options for formatting come up on the panel on the right-hand side. So you have your fill information and sort of your picture things. You have effects and then layout and properties. Layout and properties is where we're going to find our alternative text. When it comes to alt text, you do not have to put in a title. That is not required. It doesn't display. But you do need to put in the description. That is what the alt text is referring to. So for this image, I have a very basic description of what it is. And I'm just going to paste it in here. So what this item is it's a collaboration network map that we've used in one of our bibliometrics reports here in the library. So what I did is give a very basic description of what it is, a word map using NOAA office acronyms, so ESRL, Southwest Fisheries Science Center, so on and so forth, and lines to show collaboration linkages. It's very basic, it's short, it's concise. You can sort of get a feel for what it is and how it would appear. Now, I am also going to add a caption to this, which is why my alt text is sort of concise and short. So if you right click again, there's the option for insert caption. And then you have figure 2. So this is my second figure. I have it defaulted to where the position for all captions for figures is below the item. So I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to add in my caption for this item. I'm going to paste in my text. So what I'd like to do is sort of show the comparison between, and I know it's small, I'm sorry about that. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger for everybody. So I want to be able for everyone to see sort of the comparison between what my caption says and what the description or alternative text for this image says. So the caption gives a more context as to what that network mapping is actually explaining and showing. So with larger and darker connections, the ranges, sort of that kind of information, which means I can be a little more sparse in my alt text by just saying it is a word map using this information and linked by this. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's do another one where we're not looking at a graphic per se, but we're looking at more of an image. So I'm going to go back to insert. I'm going to insert yet another picture, and we're going to do this image here. It's a little small. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so everyone can see it. So again, what I'm going to do first on this one is I'm going to actually insert my caption right away. So insert caption, if figure 3, pull it below the item. And we're just going to click OK. And again, I'm going to drop in my caption information. So I have my caption. I'm going to right click on the item, format picture. You'll see I have my format picture menu over here on the right hand side. I'm going to head over to layout and properties. And when I click on that, there's the option for text box, alt text. Again, I'm not going to put in anything in title. I'm just going to go directly to description. So in this caption, it talks about heat storms, dry thunderstorms. It sort of gives a location, like a hint as to the location, the American West. And it just sort of discusses dry lightning and heat storms. So for my alternative text, what I really want to focus on is what this image is showing. What I need to do is describe this particular image so that someone who is utilizing a screen reader or any sort of assistive technology can sort of get a mental picture as to what's accompanying that text and that information. So my alternative text for this is going to be lightning strikes hitting the ground near a cluster of cacti in the desert. And that's it. Succinct, simple, you get the picture. It's simple and brief and easy. Okay. Let me just do a quick check of the questions to see if anything is popping up here. So Catherine Thomas had a question. Should a figure caption be tagged as text or should it be tagged within the figure? That's a really good question. So when you, in Word, and I'm going to focus on Word because that's the tool that I have to use. In Word, when you insert a figure and then you utilize the tools within there to insert the caption, it actually tags it as a caption. So in Adobe, there's the option to tag a figure, and then there's the option to tag a figure/caption, where you can separate out the figure with its alt text and the caption itself. So in theory, it sort of tags it like text, but you don't actually have to do any of that sort of manual tagging for it. It'll, especially within Word, it'll transfer all that over into Adobe. And then someone also had a question about being able to download the presentation. I can share that presentation with everyone. And again, I'm going to post it up on the Section 508 LibGuide. All right, so as I mentioned, I do have one more image, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert that, except I am not going to add my alternative text for that item. I want everyone to be able to see what it looks like in Adobe to add alternative text. So this is a much larger image. I am going to add in my caption, however. So again, I'm going to right click on the image once I've inserted it. I'm going to go to Insert Caption. This is my figure 4, below selected item. I'm going to click OK. And then I am going to drop in our caption for what this is. These are just two separate reels of microfilm. One has what's called vinegar syndrome, which is discussed a little more in depth in the caption here, and the other one is a normal healthy reel of microfilm. And that's also mentioned within the caption. So something to keep in mind. I'm going to actually save this document to how it is. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to convert this to a PDF. So I'm going to save as an Adobe PDF. I clearly already did that earlier today, but I'm going to do it again. And we're going to just save it as a PDF so we can look at it within the Adobe Accessibility Checker. So here is our document. You can see my images, my captions are all here for everything. So what I'm going to do to run the accessibility check is within Adobe, there's an option for accessibility. If you do not have it on your right-hand bar, if you go to Tools, under Protect and Standardize, there's an option for accessibility. It'll either give you the option for Add or Open. If you already have it pinned to your toolbar, it'll be here and you can just open it, or you can click Add and it'll add it to this toolbar here. So I'm going to go back to my document. I am going to click on Accessibility. And what I'm going to do is run a full check. Hopefully everything will come through okay. When we do a full check in the library, we check for everything. There are things that we don't always pay much attention to, but we run a check on everything because then I can see all the problems that are wrong with the document. And you'll notice I have 3 issues under document, and I have an alternative text issue, which I was expecting. So under document, you can see the title has failed here, just since it's easy and quick. To fix this, if you right click in Adobe on that item, there's an option to fix the title. It'll automatically fix it for you, or you can come in here and put in the title of the document. I'm not going to do that right now just because it's not a real document. So I'm going to skip down to alt text, and you'll see figures alternative text failed, and there's one figure, and it takes us down to our image of that microfilm. If you right click on it, there is an option for fix. If you go into fix, a little dialog box will pop up where you can set your alternative text. And this is where you can put in any additional alt text, or if you've missed an item, such as I have done here, you can drop in your alt text. Additionally, there is this option for decorative figure. If for whatever reason this item did not convey any information, it was just there for show, you can mark this as decorative figure, and then you don't have to put in that alternative text, because as I mentioned, if it's a decorative figure or part of the background, it does not require alternative text. And then if I were to have more items that required alt text, you can just flip through each one using the arrows here, drop in your text, and when you've dropped in all the text that you need to, you can just click save and close. And then you'll see as soon as you finish or fix all of those errors, it'll switch over to your little green arrow. And that's it. And then what we can do is we can go back to the top of our document. Oops. And let's check our reading order. So there's a couple ways you can get to that. You can click on reading order and then show reading order panel. It'll bring you over here. Also, if you've done this multiple times or have used Adobe before, you know there's a little icon here, this little 4 boxes with the Z. That is your reading order. And if you click on that, it'll take you to the exact same thing. It brings up the panel so you can see what page you're on and then each of the elements. And you'll see here, currently I have it showing the structure types of the tags. If you'd like, you could have it show you the page content order so you can see what order things will be read in. So my heading is the first thing, my text, and then you'll notice here, my image is listed as the 4th item, the 4th item in my reading order, where my caption and text have been grouped together. That is not ideal. However, when you submit things to the library, oftentimes we will let things like this pass. Ideally, what it will do is it will separate the two out. So it will separate out the caption and the text itself. Or we can do some touch up. So I'll get back to that in just one quick second, but I kind of want to show how it looks in the other ones as well. Sometimes you will also notice, even if this does separate out where this text paragraph is separate from the caption, you'll notice that the caption and the image itself are oftentimes flipped in terms of reading order. So it'll read the caption first and then the image. Other times it'll be the image first and then the caption. Either is fine, just it shows that those two items are linked. Sometimes also what it says in Adobe isn't what an actual screen reader does. So if you listen to, there is the option in Adobe for read out loud. When you activate read out loud, you can actually hear it read through your document and through all those tags. In my experience, and when I tested this earlier, what it did is it read the caption, it read the figure, but then when I came down to my other ones, it read the figure and then the caption, even though the reading order was listed as the opposite. Again, for our purposes and for the level of accessibility that we are striving for, either is okay. So what I'm going to do is scroll down here and just take a look at some of my other options or my other images. And you can see here, my caption is going to be read first and then the image. So my figure, and then you can see here the alt text that I had added in. And it should be the same for the other two as well. I'm going to pause for a quick second. I see a bunch of questions. So I want to maybe address any of those since I'm still in Adobe. Okay, so someone was wondering what you would do for alt text for an image if we did not have a caption. And that's a really great question. So I'm going to actually go back to Word to address that. Sorry, just trying to find the right document. Here it is. So I'm going to just go down to the very last one because that one's the easiest. And I'm going to get rid of this caption. We're going to pretend the caption does not exist. This is a really great question. So what we'd want to do, since there is no caption, but this image is conveying information to us, is we want to edit our alternative text. So initially, the alternative text I had for this item says 2 strips of microfilm held side by side. On the left, the film is very faded and warped. The strip on the right is clear and straight with the image of the map readable and clear, which is actually a pretty good description of what this image is showing. But since I don't have a caption to explain the context as to why we're comparing these two microfilm, the sections of microfilm, I would add in something here that says, let's see. So where I have on the left, the film is very faded and warped due to vinegar syndrome or something of that nature. So vinegar syndrome is what has affected this item on the right. It's a degradation of acetate film, essentially. It's the deterioration of the chemicals within the film, and it causes the film to sort of warp and bend, and it gets really faded, and it actually makes the film unusable. And you can see the difference here. So to sort of clarify, since I don't have a caption to explain that information, I try to add in little bits and pieces of that into the alternative text. But again, alt text is supposed to be relatively concise, and it's assuming that there's also additional context within the rest of the document. So within, even if you don't have a caption within the rest of the text of the document around the figure or image, there should be some sort of context for the reason for including that image. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Maybe that clarifies that. Let's see. I'm sorry, forgive me while I just look through. Katie, looks like Katie's grabbed a couple of these. So someone had a question about portraits. In the case of a portrait of a person, the guidance for alt text would be not to say portrait of President Kennedy or such. What would be the appropriate alt text? So also an excellent question. Generally, since you're not supposed to say things like picture of, portrait of, whatever it may be, especially if there's a caption, your alt text could simply say President John F. Kennedy, or if it's a picture of George Washington. And that's it. That's all that you would require. So on some of those resources that I gave you, especially WebAIM and the Social Security Administration documentation, they have a number of examples of pictures with and without captions and what the difference would be in terms of the alternative text that you would supply in each of those circumstances. They even give you some examples of incorrect alternative text. So you can compare what would be considered good alt text and what would be considered not ideal alt text. So there's another question about when you label an image as purely decorative, is that subjective? If the image is not conveying any information related to the rest of the document, related to any of the context of the document, then yes, it would be decorative. I wouldn't necessarily call it subjective. I know sometimes with NOAA publications, NOAA text series, people will put in like blue subdivision bars, and sometimes Adobe will mark those as images or figures. Those types of things can be marked as decorative. Borders are often decorative. There are some reports that are put out where there will be just an image as the background. It'll be like a faded image with the text on top. It'll still get tagged as a figure or image, but it doesn't require the alternative text because it's not actually part of the document. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so some people had asked for examples of like photographs, which that's exactly what this image is here, is a photograph. I took this photograph myself, actually. Sometimes depending on the context, sometimes it is helpful if someone specific took the photograph, or if you're trying to give credit, it's not, and it's not provided in the caption. It is helpful in your alternative text to drop in whoever took the image, but it's not required. When it comes to maps, I did not grab a map, and I wish I would have. Maps sort of run on the same principle as our network maps that I have up here. So if we had a map of, the Gulf of Mexico with the coastline and everything, and you had your caption underneath that, sort of gave information about the data points that are available and what that what the sort of scientific data is behind that map and what it's displaying. What you would put as your alternative text would be something along the lines of map of Gulf of Mexico plotting data points, or something very basic to that nature. Now, if you didn't have a caption, you would want to make a longer description, or what sometimes is called that long description, when you are missing a caption. So kind of like I mentioned with this one, where I removed the caption and we added in this longer description, and we gave a little bit more context and information. Excuse me. So there's a couple questions about tables. Tables don't have alternative text behind them. Tables are a little bit of a different beast, and let me just address tables. Tables are difficult. It is easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but it is possible to make tables really accessible within Microsoft Word. As soon as you convert them to Adobe, they become slightly problematic, which is why we don't require tables to be fully accessible. So if you have a very basic data table, you can make it accessible within Word, and then all of that should convert over to Adobe. And that's when we're looking at header rows and regularity and stuff like that. I know a majority of the tables that are put into NOAA publications, whether it's a journal article or a NOAA series document or strategic report, whatever it may be, are not simple data tables. Oftentimes they have merged cells, and according to most Section 508 guidance and accessibility rules, a compliant table cannot have merged cells. It can't have merged data. It can't span multiple pages. And for a lot of our materials, that's just not feasible, which is why we don't require tables to be fully compliant. We ask that people do the best that they can, and we call that good enough. There is sometimes an error will come up in Adobe where it asks about table summaries. Table summaries are not required either, but you can put them in. It's just adding that additional information. But again, it doesn't always transfer from Word into Adobe. Let's see. Again, please keep your questions coming. If they go into the question panel, if I don't answer it right now, I will email you. What it does is it records your email and the question so I can get back to you directly. And I will try to, what I can do is add some of these questions and the responses to those slides that I had shown earlier with those examples. And then they'll be in there so everyone can see some of these other questions. So I think someone had asked about someone had asked if we could, if I could provide these specific examples. Absolutely. What I can do is I can even provide, if people would find this helpful, I can provide this document just as an example as to how to approach things. And it sounds like people may find it useful for me to add in maybe a map as an example, and I could probably go in and add another graph. It sounds like that would be useful for everyone. So I can do that and we can post it with your, or to post it with the recording for this item. Some of the questions, some of these are really great questions and I might have to look into them just a little bit further. So I'm not ignoring questions, I promise. Just some of them may require a little bit more of an in-depth look at things and possibly pulling up some examples that I don't want to run over our time too much. Someone had asked about the conversion between Word docs into PDF and that sometimes the alt text didn't convert over. That does seem to be something that has been fixed within the most recent updates. I have not run into a problem with it. There may be issues if you're on an older version of one versus the other, where sometimes things may not come over at a one-to-one, but so far I have not had that problem since I've been upgraded on both platforms. I think with that, like I said, there's a number of questions in here. I'm just trying to grab some of the quick, sort of easy ones. I will get back to everyone with responses. And again, I will try to post those all within the presentation that I had created for you all to use. And then the person who had asked about, specific examples, there are those two websites, two links to WebAIM and to the Social Security Administration that I think are the best to use as examples. I frequently use them and refer to them whenever I'm making items compliant. So I always recommend using those two. They provide the most bang for your buck in terms of resources and variety of examples. So with that, I am gonna stop for now, but please, I'm going to leave the webinar open for just a couple more minutes. If you have questions, drop them in the question panel. I'm going to try to get all this information up and posted by, today's Wednesday, so by the end of the week, by Friday, for everyone. As always, if you have questions about anything 508 related, whether it's alt text, tables, bookmarks, anything, you can always feel free to contact me. You can contact the library directly or the NOAA IR account. We're always happy to help you in the best way possible. And I just want to thank everyone again for coming. And we will hopefully do another one of these, probably not until after the first of the year. I am happy to take suggestions as to topics you would like me to cover. I know tables are a big one, and that was one of the things we had discussed doing the next 508 webinar on. But any other suggestions are always welcome. Um, and again, thanks everybody for coming. I will respond to all your questions, and have a really great day, all right?